Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking About Birds, the only Cardinal podcast more meaningless than the last week of Cardinal baseball. My name is Nate Heininger, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Ben Samorka.
Hi, everybody.
And this week, we are going to be predominantly talking about the upcoming playoff series. If you have an idea for the opening joke, tweet us at Talk About Birds. All right, here we are, Ben. The Cardinals have played 161 games. We are recording right before the start of game 162. So the Cardinals will end this season with either 93 or 94 wins, which I think exceeds all of our expectations, even those of us who believed that the Cardinals would win the Central. I still think most of us were pegging it at 88 to 90 or so. So, 93, 94 is a good symbol of how much this season was kind of above and beyond what we were expecting. But I think for today's episode, except for a little bit at the end, we're going to save a lot of the sort of end of season retro recap observations for a later episode, because right now we've got some playoffs to talk about, baby.
There's only one thing to focus on right now, Natey boy. One thing.
Showing up early, staying late, playing a hard
giving each
nine,
other silly
getting them in the back.
Nicknames that end in Y. Yep.
That's what we're here to do. That's why we're here. So in the last week, everyone's favorite team, the Milwaukee Brewers, were eliminated from the playoffs. And we finally, it took a little while, but we got our finalized playoff bracket. And about an hour ago, we finally got the times of the games for this weekend.
Do you want me to start the episode off by complaining loudly? Is that how we should get into this? Because the fact. Okay. Well, I was. I'm happy to do that. That's so funny because before we started recording, Mary was like, "Are you going to go down there and complain about the start times?" I go, "Yes, but I'm going to wait, and I don't want to be a grouch right off the top." So I had this conversation 5 minutes ago before we hopped on here, but it's I am so displeased by the fact that 90%, no, that's probably aggressive. I'm going to say 80% of the people who will be wanting to watch this game are going to be at work during the start time. And actually the entirety of the game, this game starts at 11 for me.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't really care about the Mountain Time people because there are not very many of us, but this game starts at 11. It'll end during the workday. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't exactly know how I'm going to watch it. I obviously have a job to do. So I am very, very annoyed by that. I also think what MLB thinks that they're doing is that they think they want to have every game kind of staggered. They're like 2 or 3 hours out from each other. And they think that a baseball fan is going to sit there and watch every playoff game. But we know for a fact that baseball is regional, and some of them will, like people like you and I, will probably watch a lot of the games that are happening. But the majority of fans don't. So putting it on who's going to that game, who's watching that game. This is a very exciting matchup. The Phillies and the Cardinals haven't seen each other in the playoffs for over a decade. I think you were obviously Cardinals fans are excited for all the million reasons we've talked about. Phillies fans are equally as excited because they haven't been here for a while. So that's very exciting. They've had a very tumultuous year, and I'm guessing half the fan base is going to just be screwed out of watching this game. So I'm very, very annoyed by that. And before you respond to that, I'm also very annoyed that we get Michael Kay and Alex Rodriguez announcing the 3-game series why are those guys like, did you watch those ESPN2 broadcasts on Sundays? They were horrible. It was like if we podcasted over a baseball game on a total like a tangential conversation while the baseball game was happening. So I'm annoyed, Nate.
Well, I think that sounds like a great idea, by the way. So let's I think it's time for us to branch out with new media types, and we'll just start doing our podcasts over the broadcast. But I think we should have the broadcast going in the background of us podcasting over top of another broadcast. So real multimedia experience there. But yeah, I mean, I'll echo your rant. I will be fortunate enough to likely be able to watch this game, but besides the timing, like we didn't find out until about 48 hours before the start. So even if you are in a have like PTO or whatever, like the odds of being able to put it in 2 days in advance is going to be a struggle for a lot of people. And I think you're right. The intent is to have like a day of playoff baseball. So like the sport is going all day. The playoffs are the most exciting time, and let's have this running all day. But I think that is not how most people consume baseball. I think this is one of the things where you almost never catch me saying this, but like one of the things that I think football does that can be kind of interesting is having so many games happening at the same time, and you're kind of flipping between and building excitement about the various outcomes. I think that would work for early round playoff baseball, because if we're going to expand it now to where there's so many games, like I get it if it's the NLCS and the ALCS have like a 3:00 game and a 7:00 game. Each of those games are incredibly consequential, and it's down to only a few teams. So like you can, you have a little bit more flexibility. The group that is watching it pretty keyed in, and you have more time to schedule for those sorts of events. But right now, when there's 4 different series going at the same time, why not stack them all up? Or maybe like a 5:00 and a 7:00 start or something, where like at least people get out of work early rather than have to like miss breakfast.
Yeah, so exactly what you just said. If I'm a Rays fan that lives in California, that game starts at 12:07 Eastern time. You are starting the day with what the MLB should be considered a premier event. And now I know it's the Rays and the Guardians, and a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, that's not a premier event." But for those fan bases, it is. And
it is. Yeah.
Like you just said, like you're making your coffee and turning on a freaking playoff baseball game. No one is going to watch that. I mean, I will be very curious to see what the attendance numbers are. I just think that is absolutely asinine. Playoff baseball should be played at night. The other thing that drives me crazy about this schedule is that then they have obviously a whole Saturday, and at least Saturday, most people, or the majority of Americans, have off work. That's a great day to just stack baseball all over the place. And then you have the Cardinals that aren't starting until 7:30. So I don't understand. They could have just swapped the scheduling there. I don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, I think you are right. Is the intent is have full days of baseball. It's, playoff baseball, it's going all day. But I think that just doesn't line up with most people's actual lives who want to watch the game and work.
If you care about the Rays and Guardians game, it's very unlikely that you care about any of the other games. Maybe you care about the other AL game because you got, Blue Jays and Mariners. Maybe that's exciting. But like, yeah, I think they scheduled for like the 1% baseball fan and did not think of the majority. And I
would love to watch we run a baseball podcast, so we're like super fans, but I would love to have 3 or 4 of these games going at the same time. I've got the Cardinals that I'm watching every pitch, but there's a lot of downtime, and it'd be awesome to be able to swip around and be like, oh, Vlad's up in the Blue Jays game. Let me go watch that at bat real quick or whatever.
That's another thing. The fact that, even if you pay for MLB.TV, these games are blacked out. They should have like a playoff like whatever the NFL Red
the
Zone
Red
channel.
Zone.
Yeah, they should have a version of that on the app, on the website.
No, we know the best way to build a fan base is to stagger your product across multiple different platforms and multiple different dates and times. That's why we release every other episode is available one's available on Spotify, and then the next week it's only available on Overcast, and then the next week it's only available on Alexa.
Well, and then on the third Sunday, we do those private shows where it's just you and I, and we don't record it. But if you happen to be in the room, you can hear it.
That's my cat's favorite show.
Just my final grievance on this, and this one isn't as bad, and it will be my final grievance. Although Michael K and A-Rod can take a frickin' hike. Why is it those two?
I want an A-Rod and Edmonds booth. I just want those two.
Honestly, I would at least Jimmy is knows what's going on with the Cardinals. Alex Rodriguez is going to read one sheet and then act like he invented Albert Pujols or something like that.
Yeah.
But another grievance I have is the Friday game is on ABC. The Sunday game is on ESPN, and if there is a third game, the Saturday game is on ESPN. If there is a Sunday game, it's on ESPN too. And that is obviously not as annoying, but it's on 3 different channels over 3 what are they thinking?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, it's a mess.
It's a mess.
Well, I think, Ben, you're not considering the owners in this situation.
Sure. Yeah, they should have just sold all the rights to Apple TV Plus and made us pay for them or something like that. That would have been the ideal scenario.
I don't think you understand just how much money they make selling these to all these different platforms. So
yeah. Oh, and they have a whole new round too. So
I think you need to take a step back and remember why we're all here, and that is to serve the owners and their greedy little needs.
I should fall in line.
Yeah, DeWitt needs another mansion in California.
Of course he does. Yes.
Yeah, but hey, this is a joyous occasion, so let's. I agree with you fully. I knew I was setting up a rant when I brought that up because I was feeling it a little bit myself. And what's this podcast for if not for you and I to just let it all out sometimes and be frustrated at the MLB? But it is also. It's the greatest time of the year. The Cardinals are in the playoffs. You mentioned it. We're playing the Phillies. We all get to be a little nostalgic about the last time the Cardinals played the Phillies, which, speaking of, I was working nights at that time. I was a blackjack dealer, and that game 5, the one that was Carpenter and Roy Halladay, I called into work for that one because I was on the other side of, we've been talking about most people work in the day. That's not there's a lot of people service industry and whatnot who
of course
work overnights and at night. And for a long time in my life, I was one of those people. So the day games were great for me and the night games were the pain. So I remember though that Halladay and Carpenter game, I was like, I can't not watch this. Everything is set up for this to be like an all-timer game, right? And so I called into work, and it is one of the best decisions I've ever made of my life was calling into work to watch that game. And
I mean, one of the best playoff games of all time, I think.
Yeah, and if somehow you don't remember that game or you weren't really a big Cardinal fan at the time, it was Chris Carpenter throws a complete game shutout, and Roy Halladay throws a complete game, giving up 1 run, which happened in the first 2 at-bats of the game. Rafael Furcal lit up with a triple. Skip Schumacher doubled him in, and then there was no more scoring for the rest of the game, barely even any hits for the rest of the game. Yeah. It was one of the tightest, most high-drama games I can ever remember watching.
Ooh,
up there for me with Game 6 of the 2011 World Series. So, I mean, it really was the start of a wild and phenomenal playoff series that resulted in the last time the Cardinals have won the World Series. It was the game with the Raleigh Squirrel.
Yeah.
And it was the last time the Phillies were in the playoffs, and the last time Ryan Howard was relevant.
Oh,
and which is a bummer, St. Louis guy,
he exploded
but
his Achilles on the final at bat of
on
the
the
game.
final at bat.
Yeah.
And here we are now 11 years later, since the 11th World Series in 2011.
Whoa.
What?
You're freaking me out.
Remember for like, so 11 and 11 was big, and then 12 and 12 was like, okay, but then it didn't happen.
Right.
Then everyone tried to make 12 and 13 work, and then that like naming convention stopped. So I'm
12 and 22. It's got an all right
12
ring to it.
12 and 22. We're bringing it back.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of not pressure, but like intrigue in this last week about who the Cardinals would play. We've been saying it was the most likely thing that it would be the Phillies for a couple weeks now. And
it was like over 90% probability, but it was not 100.
Yeah. And so we got to watch the Brewers finish their collapse, which is fun.
Man.
And then the Padres and the Phillies kind of went back and forth a little bit on who might get the 5th and 6th seed. We talked about it a little bit last week on like pick your poison. I think ultimately I'm glad the Cardinals are playing the Phillies over the Padres, but both, it's all talented teams, and in a 3-game set, you really never know. So that's happening.
I think if you can't play the Brewers, which I think all Cardinals fans would prefer to play, especially how you were just talking about how they kind of faded down at the end. Like I did not think that I did not see the scenario where the Cardinals or the Brewers are going to be 7 games behind St. Louis by the end of the year, and that might even expand after after this game today. I definitely thought it was going to be a lot closer. Would have been nice to play them. I think we would have felt confident. It would have been a nice rivalry matchup, Midwest, slug out, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I think the Phillies are fine. Like the Phillies have lots of holes, and I think let's kind of just get into it. I think there's some good and some bad with the Phillies, so let's kind of break it down, I guess. And I think the good, I would say by far the strongest part of the Phillies, especially like you said in a 3-game series, is those 3 starters that they could run out, and we are quite confident that they're going to do. Zach Wheeler, game 1, who, if you're not familiar with, has an excellent fastball, great breaking ball. He is a very good hard throwing. I mean, he averages, 98, 99 miles per hour. That might be slightly hyperbolic, but pretty close.
One of the best pitchers in the NL.
Yeah.
I mean, absolute workhorse. The Cardinals have seen him twice this year, and it has not gone well for the Cardinals in both of those games. He has like 14 scoreless innings or maybe like 1 run.
Yeah.
The Cardinals do better against lefties than righties, and Wheeler is definitely one of the best righties in the NL, if not in all of baseball.
Yeah.
He had a little bit of a slow start, which is why his season stats, he's not really like being considered for Cy Young, but if you take away his like first month, he's been top 5 pitcher in the NL, and included in last year, he's just, he's an ace. He's one of the best pitchers.
Agreed. And that fastball is a thing of beauty. The Cardinals will also be facing off against Aaron Nola, most likely in game 2, who is kind of the opposite of Zach Wheeler. Both big, tall righties, but Nola is all about movement. He has probably, in my opinion, I don't know if StatCast would back this up, but the nastiest 2-seamer in baseball, something that he will paint both sides of the plate with. Got a crazy breaking ball, got a really solid changeup, doesn't really throw the 4-seam that much, just nasty movement, and I say that, and his 2-seam with crazy movement does sit 93, 94, so it's not like he's a soft tosser by any means, but compared to Wheeler, definitely less. But he's had an excellent year as well. Very high strikeouts, very low walks, very tough, and he's kind of like maybe like a young Adam Wainwright would be a good comparison. Not crazy overwhelming stuff, but good control, really good movement, strikeout stuff still.
Yeah. It's a pretty good 1-2 punch, This is I think we'll talk about the third starter in a moment, but I think if you're from a Cardinals fan standpoint, like we're really hoping this goes 3 games. Obviously, you want to win it in 2, but that's going to be hard. But like, I think you got to feel pretty good about if this series gets to 3 games. But it's going to be a challenge. I think both of these games, I would say that you would, if you're like an outside observer, you would take Wheeler and Nola over the 2 guys that the Cardinals are going to start, which we'll talk about in a moment. And in a playoff series, you always want to have that starting pitching advantage. Doesn't mean everything, but it can be a huge factor. And so it's not a great matchup for the Cardinals. Not that the Cardinals are throwing out any slouches though too, but still, like, especially that Wheeler start. I'm just really dreading game 1.
I mean, that's a 1-2 that almost every team in the league would take. Like, I guess like the Mets are fine and end of list.
Yeah.
At least
well, you're
top
not
2.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, after the Mets with DeGrom and Scherzer, it kind of becomes pick your preferred approach,
But yeah, that is how good they are. And then, like Nate was talking about, I think, the Cardinals have to feel decently good about a potential game 3. It's Ranger Suarez, who, if you don't know him, he's a young lefty. He's very good. Not anywhere close to, I think that, I would put Nola and Wheeler on that ace tier, and Wheeler for sure, and Nola kind of in and out of that. But Ranger Suarez, I guess I would kind of compare him to Jordan Montgomery a little bit. He kind of comes from a wide angle out there. He doesn't throw overwhelmingly hard, mostly fastball, changeup, big, tall lefty. He's got a couple of breaking balls that'll throw too, but it's really fastball, changeup all day, and kind of pumping that. And, his numbers have been fine. All the Phillies pitchers are hurt by the Phillies defense, which we'll talk about, but that, his peripherals look better than his actual numbers do.
Yeah.
But obviously that doesn't matter when you have, it's going to be the same lineup behind him that it's been all year. So that'll be what it is.
Yeah. Though pitching in Busch might be an advantage for him compared to pitching in, Citizens. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking like the Cardinals have mashed lefties all year.
Yeah.
He's a lefty. He is good, but still, you just got to like that matchup better than the first 2.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess let's talk a little bit about the other things that go well for the Phillies. We've spent a lot of time talking about their pitching, and rightfully so, but what they're really known for is the power on their team. Real Muto, maybe best catcher in the league, or at least this year he has been offensively. He's been good for a long time, and this year is having an even better year. Just an all around fantastic player. He's one of those guys who doesn't necessarily do one thing at an elite level, but does everything at an above average level. And that includes catching, running, hitting for power. I mean, he just does everything.
He's got a great arm. He is always in the top in stolen bases, or caught stolen bases. He has 21 stolen bases himself.
Yeah.
Which is
for,
crazy.
I guess for a catcher is elite. So I don't want to say, I just kind of said he's not elite in any one thing, but I guess like in broader baseball terms, he's not like an elite speed guy. But for catchers, obviously 21 stolen bases is an elite mark.
Yeah, and I think he pretty much far and away had the best season of any catcher this year.
Yeah,
Adley Rutschman will probably surpass him next year because of the insane 2/3 of a season he put together. But right now, probably put my money on JT. But yeah, I mean, he's been great. He's been the offensive driver for the entire second half. He's got a 162 WRC plus in the second half of the season, which is I don't know
pretty
if that's
good.
all telling, but. Obviously very good. We'll keep going down the line. Nick Castellanos has kind of turned his bat around a little bit, which is something that I'm sure the Cardinals are aware of. But, when the Cardinals saw the Phillies earlier in this season, he was pretty much a non-factor. I think he was ineffective for one of those series. And if I remember correctly, he was injured for another one of those series, and has come back and is hitting. We all know Nick Castellanos from his time with the Reds. Like, not somebody you really want to mess around with.
Yeah.
Especially, this is narrative-y stuff that you can put whatever, but he wants to beat the Cardinals really, really, really bad. I guarantee that.
I mean, what's the all the images of him standing over, what was it? Was it Jake Woodford
It was
or
Jake Woodford. What?
yeah, poor Jake Woodford. He's like
Yeah.
standing over him screaming. Yeah.
Woodford's like, I just got here, man.
Yeah, leave me alone. He's of the same mold that a lot of these guys are, that he hit ball real hard, and they've got a lot of them, so it's a lineup that can do a lot of damage or nothing at all if you can manage it well, but to keep it going, Schwarber, 46 home runs on the year, which if it wasn't for Aaron Judge's 62, which congrats to Judge, like, there'd be, I think, more he did it. There'd be more like discussion of Schwarber almost getting to 50, which is a huge number. But I mean, it's kind of all he does though too, super low batting average, not great in the field. But in a 3-game playoff, you don't need much more than a couple home runs sometimes.
No, and he's one of those players, and I think you probably categorize most of the Phillies being this, like, these are guys that will make Busch Stadium look small, if they have a nice series, because these are guys that obviously Citizens Bank is a bit of a bandbox, but these are players that will hit it out of any ballpark off any pitcher. I will say the good thing, and I'll lump Kyle Schwartz and Rhys Hoskins kind of into the same bucket. Like, no defense, lots of swing and miss, lots of power.
Yeah, which will be an interesting combo because they have lots of swing and miss, but the Cardinals are not a strikeout team,
right?
So it's a soft contact team. So it'll be interesting to see if the Phillies can make adjustments. Basically Cardinals pitching is going to need to execute really, really well on that game plan. The game plan that's gotten them where they are today, but if Michaelis is flat,
those balls are going to go really far.
It's not going to go very well, and it'll happen quick. I think the big sort of wild card, no pun intended, or maybe a little pun intended here, is it's got to be Bryce Harper, right? I mean, he's the future Hall of Fame MVP winner, multi MVP, best player in the league at times. Can be good at defense, is an elite hitter. So, and not just power, he does everything, right? So
you could argue he's the best player in this series. Now, his season has been very strange because of broken thumb and elbow issues and all this. But I think, kind of what you're alluding to is, like, if Bryce clicks in this series, if he finds his everything. Timing, it changes. Yeah, exactly. It does.
That'd be an interesting, what you just said. Like, I think if you're trying to pick the best player in the series, I think you really quickly, I guess if we're saying position player, it very quickly narrows down to Bryce Harper, Nolan Arenado, and Paul Goldschmidt, right? And if you're going this season, it gets more easy to choose. But if you're like starting your franchise today and you had to pick one of those three,
taking Bryce over those two guys, and I love those two guys. Everyone, of course, we love them, but Bryce is that dude.
Yeah, well, Andy's several years younger too, so that would be a factor in starting your franchise. But even if you're picking for 2023, like, you would not be faulted for taking Harper over Arenado or Goldschmidt, even after what's happened in this season. But he has had a rough year. He's been injured through most of it, and he's not really gotten his timing back since coming back from injury, which is a totally normal thing. But the playoffs, as we've said over and over, regular season performance is not a consistent predictor of postseason performance. And so you really can't come into this series with any confidence that Harper will be anything other than amazing, and we hope that's not the case, but they should plan on him being a significant threat.
Yeah, and I kind of look at it, my 2 cents on it, and I'm sure, Ollie and the team have much, much better information than I have, but I kind of look at it, he's the one guy that you really can't let beat you. Like, I'd much
Yeah.
rather give Castellanos or Reese or Schwarbs something to hit, and stay out of Harper's happy zone, as much as possible. And if those other guys beat you, the other guys beat you. But I kind of look at him as like, I don't know, like Big Papi in the 2013 World
Oh,
Series. Like,
God.
just don't pitch to him.
Yeah.
Just leave
Just
him
walk
alone.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk a little bit about how the Cardinals are like set up for this series here in a little bit, but we're kind of talking about offense anyway. And so some interesting things. The Phillies are actually better against lefties than righties. But on the road, they've been worse against lefties and righties. So I don't know how you square that. That's where I get a little, on the road is a smaller sample size. If you look at the whole season, they've been better against lefties than righties. But their biggest bats are all lefties,
Right.
So I think we'll see a lot of mixing and matching in this series. We'll see a bunch of Matts, Montgomery, and probably Zach Thompson out of the bullpen to deal with exactly Harper and Schwarber. It'd be my expectation.
And Schwarber struggles against lefties, but Harper historically has been fine against lefties.
Yeah.
And I think the way that Castellanos and Real Muto hit lefties is probably what's responsible for those numbers, because they just absolutely, Castellanos against lefties is like one of the best hitters in baseball.
Yeah.
But he's also like, he's not infallible, but it's just somebody you also need to be careful with. But
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess another thing, thinking about what the Phillies can do well. I mean, this is a good team, right? We're talking a while about what they are good at, and so it hasn't always felt that way this season, especially considering they fired their manager halfway through the season.
Oh, yeah, Joe.
Yeah, Joe Girardi. But they're pretty good at running. They are, even though you'd think of Schwarber and Hoskins as these big lumbering dudes, overall the team is pretty good on the base paths. So maybe we'll see some Yachty heroics.
Well, I guess we'll talk about that when we talk about that. But the way the Cardinals use the catcher position is going to be very interesting to me. But let's talk before we're done gassing up the Phillies. Let's talk about why they're bad and why we kind of laughed at them all year. I want to start first with the bullpen. They have the second worst bullpen ERA in the second half. That bullpen ERA is 5.14, and the peripheral numbers are even worse than that. Their FIP is closer to 6.5. It's been bad. They do have Jose Alvarado, who throws the ball 1 million miles an hour and is very talented. But he also walks a lot of guys. Their bullpen is bad. And I think, like, what did we just say? Wheeler, Nola, good, bullpen bad. So obviously the strategy is to get those big hosses out and then get into that, soft underbelly as quickly as you possibly can, which is, I'm sure, most teams, strategy anyways. But I say with the Phillies, like, as soon as you get that starter out, like, the floodgates are opening, or at least we should expect, runs to be scored quickly.
Well, it's another way in which the Cardinals are kind of the opposite, the anti-Phillies, right?
Yeah.
Because you'd argue that as long as the Cardinals don't have to go to their bullpen in like the third or fourth inning, like, you're feeling really good when the Cardinal bullpen comes in, and you're just hoping that the starter gets through 5 or 6 while keeping the game close, because we could probably lock down the back half of the game. It's the opposite for the Phillies. They are really, really hoping Wheeler can go 7, 8, if not 9.
Yeah.
They're hoping Nola can go 7, and then they probably don't even want to get to a game 3. Or, I mean, who does? But they particularly are hoping not to get to a game 3.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I mean, the guy who closed their playoff clinching game was recently their like 4th starter. They are. It was Zach Eflin. They are their saves leader, Corey Knebel, who led the team with 12, is out for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a lot of inefficiency and a lot of injury, but their bullpen is trash. And I think that is where the Cardinals are generally considered the favorite in this matchup. That's at least like the Vegas betting odds and things like that. And I think that's part of it. If you look at this season too, the Cardinals have had a lot of late game comebacks, a lot of late inning, scoring outbursts. And I think that's a testament to their approach and just waiting for the right guy on the mound to be not elite, and they'll jump on him. And so I don't know. It makes me think like you're gonna have Donovan lead off and just be like, all right, Donovan, we don't even care if you get a hit. Your goal is to make Wheeler throw 10 pitches. You know, just follow them all off. Just get up there and annoy him. Edmund, you too, just get up there, annoy him. Newt Bar, we don't care if you get a hit.
I want to see like Albert and Goldie and Nolan say, every pitch you get over after 5, I'll give you $1,000 or something to the young guys. You know what I mean? Like, however we can make this happen.
However, just get them out of there.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I also think I think that's 100% right on. I also would not be surprised to see the Phillies and Rob Thompson use their pitching staff in a very creative and interesting way because of all that. Like, if we see Wheeler come out at some point during Game 3, if it gets to that, you know, kind of pulling out all of the stops because their bullpen is what it is. And I'll be very curious to see what their postseason roster looks like how many of those bullpen arms are going to be there. And what that's all going to look like. But it should be very interesting. But yeah, like you said, I think that I love that. I'll throw in $5. I'll grease these wheels however we can do this.
We'll start
$5 total. Like, I'm not per pitch.
No. I will give you $5 St. Louis Cardinals if you can get Wheeler out in the 4th inning.
There we go.
Yeah, and I mean, so the other thing that they struggle with, obviously the joke that we've really been leaning in all season, is that defensively they're not very good. And the Cardinals are a bit of a home run heavy team, but you've got a lot of guys who sort of the core of the lineup though is putting the ball in play. Your Brendan Donovans, your obviously Goldie and Arenado, and second half Pujols, so again, in these short series, doesn't take much to swing it. And so a few bad plays, a few extra bases. The Cardinals are great at taking that extra base on what should have been a singles, a double, or going first to third. Those things will really matter. And that's what I'll be looking for, especially early in this series, to see how the Cardinals adjusted, knowing that the team is a bad defensive team.
Yeah. And to put some numbers to that, I just to give some context, so, the Cardinals were not as good defensively this year as we all expected because of injuries and trades and blah, blah, blah.
But the collapse of the outfield.
The collapse of the outfield, of the Gold Glove outfield. I'm just going to use outs above average because I think that's easy and understandable. But the Cardinals had, as a team, 23 outs above average this season. The Phillies were minus 37.
I knew it was going to be minus, but I was like, what, how big is this minus number going to be? And I don't think I would have guessed minus 37. That's rough.
The only team that's worse than the Phillies this year would be the Nationals, who are basically a AAA team for a good chunk of the year. And Juan Soto was not helping those defensive metrics whatsoever. And the Cardinals are 4th on the positive end. So definitely, if there are two things, I think there's, as you said, they're kind of bizarro world teams, but that might be the most glaring difference is the Cardinals have good, clean defense, and the Phillies really don't. I mean, JT Realmuto is as good as they get, and then everyone else is fine. Bad.
They did pick up Edmundo Sosa, though he is hurt. It is believed that he'll be back for the playoffs, but or at least for the wild card series. But I don't believe it's been locked in just yet. So, and obviously having a great defensive shortstop really pluses up your overall defensive numbers. Sure. But still, one guy out of the other 8 or 7 in the field, it's not going to save it.
You have to imagine that job's going to Bryson Stott, who has not been great defensively. So we'll see about Edmundo Sosa. I mean, you go around the horn and it's all pretty bad. Their second baseman, Gene Segura, is decent. He's probably the second best defender on the team. But
at
Alec
the
Bohm,
least valuable defensive position, or second least.
Alec Bohm, I mean, he's a fine average hitter, but he might be one of the worst defensive third basemen I can remember. I mean, maybe Ryan Braun is above him in the bad category, and then that one season he played third base, and then Alec Bohm right below him.
Yeah, I have to imagine the Phillies are going to be looking for someone else at third, because Bohm, high average is nice, but if you're not really hitting for power and you're not hitting for or you're not playing good defense, like what are you doing at third base?
I would have bet money that they were going to put Chris Bryant at third base, and that just didn't happen. But I get to watch him now in Denver for foreseeable future. Yay!
All right, so that's what the Phillies do bad. I think it's more good than bad. That's how they got to the playoffs. But it is a type of bad that hopefully lines up with where the Cardinals are particularly good, especially that bullpen element.
They really remind me of like an old school, like mid-level AL team. Like, they got mashers, they got a couple of high-end pitchers, and they kind of just let it ride.
Yep, I agree. And if it wasn't for Milwaukee completely falling apart, they probably, not even probably, they just aren't in the playoffs. They're the 6th seed team for a reason. And not that the Padres are a full head above them, but I do think it's pretty easy to say that the Phillies are the worst team in the NL that have made the playoffs. So it's one of the few benefits that the Cardinals get for winning the division, but not being a top 2 division winner, is they at least get to play the Phillies at home, which plays to the strength. So I think, we don't know. That's why they got to play the games, but this is maybe the one playoff series that the Cardinals will have, of hopefully many, where we can go and be like, this feels like a good matchup. Because if the Cardinals win this, they will play the Braves. And then if they win that, they're playing either the Mets or the Dodgers, probably.
Yeah.
So it's a hard road ahead for the Cardinals to make a deep run. But at least on this first one, it's I think a pretty ideal matchup.
Dude, watching the 3-game series, Mets Braves, I might be more afraid of the Braves right now than the Dodgers or any other team in baseball. They look so good right now.
That's been that whole story, right? Is that like the Mets did not collapse. The Braves just have been the best team in baseball since like June. It's been kind of quiet because of, I guess, just how good the Mets have continued to be and all the other storylines around baseball. But I think people are starting to wake up to realize, like, oh shit, the Braves, who won the World Series last year and are a better team this year than they were last year, might be the real team to beat, even though the Dodgers won 110 games or whatever. So let's talk a little bit more deeply about the Cardinals' approach and what we're expecting to see. I think the big discussion right now is the rotation and how you set up your pitching staff. I feel pretty confident, in my opinion, on what's going to happen. I'll be interested to hear if you feel anything different. So really hasn't changed, frankly. My expectation is that the game 1 will be Michaelis, game 2 will be Quintana, and game 3 will be Flaherty. And I think you see Montgomery and Wainwright waiting in the wings on any of those games for any sort of issues, particularly in game 3 with Flaherty. They might get creative with Montgomery with that lefty lineup, but that's my expectation. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that you're probably right on. I think the only question mark is Adam Wainwright and what is the value of postseason experience. what does Ali think of that? What does the front office think of that? And I am curious. Like, I would not be surprised if Waino gets game one, especially it being against Wheeler, setting the tone. It's in Busch Stadium. We know Waino pitches well in Busch Stadium historically. Are they confident with his arm? I mean, you said this. We've talked about this in the Bird Scored. We've talked about this on the pod. Like, Waino's probably driving that conversation more than anyone, and he wants to win more than anyone. And I think he'll probably be honest with his self-assessment and all that. But I would say that's probably the only wrinkle into what you said that I would throw out there. I would not be surprised if he gets a start, especially if it's early. And yeah, I think you're probably right on. I could also see the Cardinals getting really, really creative. Maybe it's all right. We're going to go throw Jack out there for one time through the lineup, and then somebody else is going to take the second time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they had Jack go one. I wouldn't be surprised if they had Matz go one. Do kind of something like that.
Yeah.
What like. If it gets to a game 3, I think Ali's proven that he will play the matchups even to an excruciating and maybe obnoxious to watch fashion, but in a fashion that he believes will be successful. So that's kind of my expectation.
I think that's right for game 3. Like, yeah. I feel pretty confident that it's going to be Michaelis and then Quintana, and those games will be pretty much played straight up. If there's a game 3, I think it's all hands on deck. I think you could see Montgomery get the start, and serve as a starter 1-2 innings, and then go to Flaherty for 1-2 innings, go to Waino for 1 or 2 innings, or Matz, or however the wherever we are in the lineup, and really, like he said, excruciatingly play that lefty righty. But I don't know. I mean, it's not like these guys don't have playoff experience themselves. Michaelis has started in the playoffs multiple times. Quintana has gone deep in playoff runs with other teams. So I get it. And trust me, it's Waino. Like, of course, I love Waino. Who doesn't love Waino? But I don't know. I just get the sense that Marmol and the team, part of the hiring of Marmol and part of, I think, what they struggled with Schilt is that, like, we can't make these decisions off of these like emotional narratives, right? Yeah. Like, Matt Carpenter should not be batting cleanup. I don't care that it's Matt Carpenter. I don't care that he's a future Cardinal Hall of Famer. He's not good right now, so he can't be your last off your bench, and also you're batting fourth when he plays. And I think you'll see that with Waino, and Waino himself has already started to signal, like, I don't know if I'm going to be in the rotation in the playoffs, which we said on the show, if he'll be the first to say it if he's not going to be in the rotation. And this Pirates start, I mean, like, if he had gone out there and mowed down the Pirates and looked like his command was back and, everything was looking good, I would be all in on what you're saying. Let him have game 1, short leash, it's Waino, etc. But, like, I don't think you can risk it against this, the Phillies and their mashers. So I don't know.
I think that you're right in everything you said. And I think the key phrase is short leash. I think that no one on this pitching staff is too precious. Short leash is going to be the name of the game. We're going to see a lot of pitchers. I expect a lot of pitchers to be a part of this 3-game series. And I think that'll be key. I think if somebody starts to slip or they're not liking, we know that Ali is going to be looking at spin rates and location and everything, evaluating that pitch to pitch, if at the most, and inning to inning at the very least. So I think you're right on. I think Quintana, Michaelis, Flaherty, Montgomery, some form or fashion of all 4 of those guys pitching in this series makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So we'll see. We're going to find all this out probably in between us recording and this episode being released. This will probably all be figured out. So we're really good at that. Another big question is, what do you do with Albert in this series? He's been getting excess playing time because we're chasing a dream. But, do you start him against Wheeler? And you're now Oliver Marmol. Are you starting Pujols against Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola?
Probably not starting him against Wheeler, probably waiting for an opportune time to pinch hit him against a lefty in that game, probably starting him against Nola, and probably starting him against Mr. Suarez because he's a lefty, and that makes all the sense. And I think, Albert's proven that he can hit movement this year. So that's the way I kind of look at it. I think I would more than likely rather get, Dickerson's been a little bit better. I kind of like putting in a lefty at the DH spot. Although, Newt's probably starting. Donovan's probably starting. I don't know if you have a better option is probably the more relevant question. I guess it really depends on, what the status of Tyler O'Neill is and what that looks like and how that kind of changes your alignment. I could be talked into it. I think that there's probably a better matchup for the DH in game one, though, if it is Zach Wheeler.
When did Burleson isn't eligible, right? He got called up too late.
No, we talked about that a few weeks ago. He just missed eligibility. That would be great.
Yeah.
He's been hitting a little bit too.
Yeah, his underlying numbers. If you haven't yet, go and look at his hard hit rate and like his rolling at bat numbers. He looks like he's really starting to figure it out. But not eligible. So yeah, I guess I had been kind of thinking he's just been on fire, kind of lefties and righties. So like, just get him in there. And
I think that is what it will ultimately be. Yeah. What happens. Yeah.
But I do like your idea of, because if you just have him in there, then they can pitch around him. But if you reserve him from the bench, then you can, insert him at the right moment. But that's only likely one AB.
Yeah.
So yeah, I bet he starts all three. That's where maybe the narrative and just he's been crushing. He's been the best hitter in the National League for 3 months now, which is wild to say.
It's hard to argue with. Yeah, that is for sure.
And against lefties and righties. I mean, it's been a lot of soft tossing righties, like you said. And Wheeler is not that. But
no.
I mean, he's locked in. He's been great.
Tell you what, Albert has not been missing mistakes. So I mean, really, if you put it on it that lens, like no pitcher is perfect. Maybe maybe he'll catch a Wheeler mistake or something like that. But yeah, I'm not going to like tweet angrily or next episode I'm not going to be mad that Albert got 3 starts. It was more just like there's probably some creativity you can use here.
If there was someone that was a clear DH opportunity, maybe Yepez, But if there was someone who was like, oh, well, you're going to get a competitive at bat against a righty from this guy that we think is a clear, more competitive at bat than Pujols, this decision would be different. But it's hard to think of anyone who is going to give you that.
I think, Cardinals fans should not be surprised if that DH in game one is Corey Dickerson. But we shall see. I think unlikely, but I saw some numbers like he has hit Wheeler well in the past. I don't know how much exactly that'll be valued in a 1-game start, especially with the playoffs, especially with Dickerson not going great lately. But wouldn't be surprised to see that either.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, what else? Who we leading off? How you setting the top of your lineup? Again, let's start with the righties. How you starting your lineup?
If I had my druthers, they've rolled out this lineup a couple of times. I would do Donovan 1, Newt 2, and then the big boys. But I kind of like those 2 guys, especially against a righty. They get on base a lot. Newt's been kind of getting back into his power swing again recently. And I think, we've seen the formula work well all year. Get those guys kind of to clog up the bases, and then you got your mashers, your 3 mashers, potentially 4 if O'Neill's going to be a factor. And bet on that, to work at least one of the 4 times, and you might win the game right there. So I think that's what I'd like to see. And I think, that was part of the formula that really drove the success in the second half. So if it ain't broke, keep going.
Donovan's been consistent. To me, the wild card there is again Newt, who has looked like one of the new central pieces of the Cardinals for the next 5 years at times, and at times has kind of looked lost at the plate. So he has looked a lot better recently, and I think I agree. Yeah, I roll the dice on that because your alternatives there, I guess, is putting Edman back up there, and that has its own risk reward factor. But I think I'd be prioritizing OBP And
I think against a lefty, against Suarez, you could convince me to go Edman, Donovan, and then the big
yeah,
boys. But against the righties, I like lefty.
yeah, yep, yeah. It's probably not any more complicated than that. Donovan for sure, and then Nootbaar or Edman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about Tyler O'Neill for a moment. It's mostly a bummer, but certainly seems unlikely that he will be ready for the wild card game.
Yeah. Well, here I'll just read what we got here. He won't be active. He's obviously not playing in the game that's happening while recording right now. If you did not know that, he did not make it to a final game. He won't be activated until after today's game. Oliver Marmol did say that the outfielder could be included on the postseason roster, but they are being extremely non-committal. That being said, Tyler makes sense as a defensive replacement, as a guy to put on the bases. Like, he still has a lot of value for the team. And we saw, there have been performances where guys have kind of come off the IL out of nowhere and performed. So I think that if he is healthy and they have confidence that his timing is going to be there even a little bit, I think he'll probably be in the lineup because he is a game changer with the power in the glove.
Yeah.
The Cardinals are better with Tyler O'Neill.
Yeah, it's worth the risk, but they said a huge part of his value is his speed. It's that lower half, and a hamstring strain is a huge, problem for that part of his game. So is it a 80% O'Neill better than a Corey Dickerson or, whoever else might get that spot? Maybe, but I could see also there being a concern of re-injury, and then you end up losing him for the whole postseason, assuming you get past the first round.
Yeah.
Because I definitely read it of like, he's not good right now, but it's a day-to-day thing, and they have to decide by Friday for this series, but there'll be another week for the next series if they make it.
Right. Poor Ty.
Yeah. It'd be fun. I mean, what a good narrative that would be if he's able to come back and be a big part of it after essentially a lost season.
Yeah.
And I have some confidence he's looked good when he's back.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely worth it if he's even 95%, but obviously that's easy for us to say on the outside. We got a few more things we want to talk about before we wrap up the episode. But before we do, as always, we want to remind all of our listeners that this show is supported on Patreon. That is patreon.com/talkingaboutbirds. If you want to support us, we're putting the wraps on a full season of podcasts.
Wow.
We somehow did this every week for 32 weeks straight, and we don't intend to stop. We've got some silly plans for the off season. We're starting to plan some of that because turns out there's not a lot to talk about in the middle of November. So we're going to try to still make it fun for everyone. So we've got some ideas and some plans. If you want to support the show, support our time and effort to bring this to you every week, consider subscribing at patreon.com/talkingaboutbirds. All subscribers get access to the Bird Scored, our private Discord server where we're constantly talking about the Cardinals because, hey, we can't get enough. Even a weekly podcast, we got to talk even more about it. Ben's in there ranting. I'm in there making bad jokes. Other people are in there making really bad jokes.
Yes.
So you need more of that in your life. So subscribe. And also, sometimes you get early access to episodes. Kind of depends on when we record and when I'm able to get it edited. But sometimes I can get it out even up, almost a full day ahead of the normal release schedule, which makes our podcast slightly more relevant sometimes. So check it out. Also, consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps. Ben, where can people find us online otherwise?
Yeah, make sure to give us a follow on Twitter at Talk About Birds. Of course, you could follow us on Instagram as well at Talking About Birds. Talk About Birds on Twitter, Talking About Birds on Instagram.
Don't get it confused. It's not confusing.
It's not confusing at all. If you have any thoughts, musing, questions, ideas, I don't know, whatever you might have, you can always reach out to us via email at talkaboutbirds@gmail.com. I don't really have anything for Nate this week. I think Nate did commit to making me a Christmas pizza. So we're going to bring it back to pizza talk.
Mary asked. So
she's been talking about she wants one of your pizzas. She's been talking about this for weeks.
I committed to making Mary a Christmas pizza. I am non-committal towards you at this point.
I am bigger and stronger than Mary. I will take that pizza.
I guess once I've handed it off, I have no control at this point.
You know, it's like a podcast. Once you make it and put it out there in the world, is it really your pizza anymore?
You know, it's my pizza is like art. I agree.
Okay.
I'm importing that flour from Italy, baby. It's good.
I know. I'm aware.
All right, we've got a little bit more Cardinal news to talk about, and then we're gonna wrap up. So let's see what else. Oh, we've got the Gallegos. Contract. Yeah.
I think some kind of cool news. Giovanni Gallegos, if you did not see, he just got a small extension. It's really going to cover his ARB years. And then there's 1 year for an option at the end of that. So that's exciting. Gets $500,000 signing bonus. Good for you, Giovanni. He's going to get $4.5 million next year, $5.5 the year after that. And then, like I said, there is an option that could be worth a total value of $6.5 million. After that, and there's a bunch of escalators and all that stuff. Something that I thought was cool about this whole thing is that he said to Derek Gould after it happened, quote, "I feel so happy. I don't have the word exactly for how I'm feeling right now. I've got an extension with the team. My confidence is 100%." And then he corrected himself saying 200%. So I think,
Derek, I'm a millionaire now. I have so much money now. Can you believe how much money I have?
And the guy, you know, he's excited. He wants to be here. He wants to be a part of the thing. He's been great. Why not extend this guy? This is a guy who's been, you know, just short of what I would call a relief ace over the past few years. He's been with the Cardinals. He kind of even had a little dip this year and then totally found his stuff. And hey, I like having Giovanni in the back of the bullpen for, you know, the foreseeable future. So I think that's great. Love it.
Yeah, agree 100%. In fact, I would have been fine with a couple more years after it, but lock him up, get a year out of free agency, and keep your cost controlled for arbitration. The dude's now a multimillionaire, and he's been great. I honestly thought it'd be a little bit higher. I think the dip this year suppressed his value, and sort of we talked about it last week or the week before. I don't ever even want to say he lost the closer's job. He just got like outpaced by Ryan Helsley because he was still good, and we have that sort of committee now of two fantastic guys at the end. It's kind of like the Braves and the Mets, right?
I was just going to say that it's a Mets and Braves situation. It's not that the Mets are bad, and it's not that Giovanni's bad. It's that Helsley is that good, and the Braves are that good.
Yeah.
But yeah, all told, very happy about that. Like me some Giovanni.
Yeah, and you don't see a lot of September contracts or October contracts, so you never know what Mo's cooking up there. So
also having one of your best bullpen arms saying, "I feel 200% confident going into the playoff run," you know, whether that's going to, you know, increase his performance or not. I like to hear that. That's nice.
Certainly can't hurt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other Cardinals news, Jordan Hicks is expected to make a 1-inning appearance in relief behind starter Matthew Liberatore in Wednesday's game, the game that is started upon this recording. So obviously really good news. It will be much better news once we see the results, see what the velo's looking like, all that kind of stuff. But as we've said many, many times, having a Jordan Hicks in your bullpen, even if he is not, you know, 100%, that is just a win in the playoffs. A guy that can throw like that, you never know if he could click in and be highly, highly effective. So we'll be watching that, and we're hopeful it'll be, you know, first off, he'll come out healthy, and second off, he's effective. Yeah.
I mean, I guess Cardinals are in a pretty good spot where we can say like we don't necessarily need Jordan Hicks to be a relief ace, but they are obviously a significantly better team with that. It's neat. Very
Sure
neat.
is. It sure is.
Yeah, I think that's all the real news. I think we're going to briefly talk about just the overall playoff bracket. We kind of already talked about the NL side of things. So, I'm going to make you do it right now, Ben. Who you got coming out of the AL? What's your pick?
Yeah.
You don't have to run the whole bracket, but I'm interested to see, like, maybe what do you think is the ALCS going to be?
I would not be surprised if we have Blue Jays Yankees. I think the Blue Jays are kind of underrated right now. Alek Manoah is as good as they get. I like him so much. And I think that their offense, if you haven't been paying close attention, their offense has kind of come alive in the past month and a half. So I like them a lot. And then I think out of the other division, I like the Yankees a lot. The Tampa Bay Rays have kind of limped into the playoffs a little bit. They are not inspiring a ton of confidence. I don't really like how their team is kind of shaped out. I already talked about how I feel about Cleveland. Just don't think they have the team to do it. We'll see if they survive the Rays, but I do think the Yankees will kind of come out on top on that side of the bracket. And it's very unfortunate that Seattle and Blue Jays are going to be playing each other in the wild card series. I was really hoping Seattle would kind of put together a little run, their first time in the playoffs in 20 plus years. I like them. We've talked about, they're kind of the new Reds and with some other guys over there. So I want the best for them, but I just think the Blue Jays are slightly better. And I will say, I do believe that the Astros are the best team in the AL. I just don't want to see them.
You're calling the upset.
Yeah, I just don't want to see them. And I want to see, like Vladdy. We're talking about how Harper can put a series on his back. Vladdy is that dude, and they have more guys like that too. But I really think it comes down to the high end pitching for the Blue Jays, and I do think that offense is awake, and it might be scary. And I think a Yankees Blue Jays CS would be a blast. I'm tired of the Astros, so that's what I'm hoping for. Obviously, there's upsets in there, but that's my prediction and what I'd like to see.
Yeah, I'm hoping for a Birds World Series.
Hell yeah,
tweet, baby. But
the show might explode.
Yeah, but unfortunately, if I were like betting on this, which I probably will be, at least a little bit, our fantasy baseball group is doing that. I gotta go Astros coming out of the AL. I know it's the boring, least fun choice, but they're so
really,
good.
really good.
They're really good, and I just have a hard time seeing anyone beat them in a series. But if it's gonna be a team to do it, it will be something like the Blue Jays, where those guys get hot. I mean, Bo Bichette has had an insane last month and a half, and he's arguably the second or third best hitter on that team. George Springer and Vlad, and I mean they're a stacked team.
Alejandro Kirk has had a great year. Matt Chapman has had a decently solid year. They have their backup catcher has some power. Teoscar Hernandez had a down year, but is still very good.
He's been good recently, though.
On that team now.
Yeah, it's a good team. I think it's definitely stacked that side of the bracket. Having the Mariners, the Blue Jays, and the Astros all in one side of the bracket is disappointing. Because I get no fun out of the Rays or the Guardians, and then even the Yankees. Obviously there's some fun stuff going there, but I would love a Mariners Blue Jays ALCS. How fun would that be? But obviously not possible. So we'll see. I predict Astros because it's, I think, the most obvious choice, but I would much rather have pretty much any team. I would even prefer to see the Yankees in the World Series than the Astros. I don't think that's a controversial take.
An Astros Dodgers World Series is going to be something that I will watch because I'm an addict, but I'm not happy about it.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap up. We are going to finish this episode and finish our regular season coverage by concluding a game that we started at the beginning of the season, which we called Draft Day Heroes and Hatchlings Edition.
Oh yeah, I always forget we have a song for this, and every time
we have a song for this one. associate sound producer Chris Phillips for that song. So if you have not heard any of the updates or familiar with this game, basically what we did is before the season started, we did a draft where we had to pick 3 players from the 40-man and then 3 players who were not, and we had to predict. We were trying to say who's going to have the most Fangraphs WAR combined at the end of the season. Ben had the first overall pick, and then we went back and forth, and we've been doing updates at every quarter of the season. Now, we are doing this in the middle of the last game has started since we've been recording. And when I today sat down to do these calculations, I thought there's one game left. There's no way, like, we've got 6 players on our boards. There's no way that like one game could have a likely impact on this final score.
I will say Arenado is in this game. Juan Yepez is in this game. Burleson's in this game. Dylan Carlson is in this game. And I believe all of those people we drafted. So something could happen. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, and Liberatore is starting, and Oviedo is starting, who we both also have.
I didn't even think about that.
So you'll see. So I will say I'm going to run down the things, but this is not decided. But I thought this was so ridiculous that I had to keep it in the episode because of. So I'm going to go through it now. Okay. So in the first overall pick, Ben selected Paul Goldschmidt. Great pick.
Smart.
It was pretty much obvious it was going to be you're picking him or Arenado. You picked Goldie. Goldie ended with a 7.1, and that's locked in because he's not in the game today. So huge season from Goldschmidt, likely MVP. Gave your team a great floor. Next, you picked Tyler O'Neill. We already talked about him a lot. We've talked about him all season. Still giving you 1.3 though. So for all of how this season went, could have been a lot worse.
That's how good he is.
Then you have Harrison Bader, who is now back with the Yankees and playing well. He is at 1.5, which is what he was at the last time we checked in. So he's playing, but he hasn't had any changes, but at least he's back. Brendan Donovan. Arguably your best pick for where you got him. This was your 4th pick. He is at 2.7, and that is up from 1.8 from the last time he did this. So he's put up almost a full WAR in the last 25% of the season. And I mean, coming in at almost 3 in your rookie year and not being a power guy, you've got to really be doing a lot of things well in order to achieve almost 3 WAR. And, I think he's not going to win rookie of the year. Because
he is in the conversation.
He's in the conversation. Though. He should be, and I think if he were to win it, you would not call it a bad pick, but there's just some flashier, better, more exciting players and whatever.
Harris too is going to win it.
Yeah, exactly. And he's been better. So I'm not upset about it, but Donovan is, a high contender for rookie of the year. And then here's where it gets a little more interesting. Johan Oviedo, he is at this before today's game, 0.6. What's interesting is that the last time we checked in with him, he was at 0.1. So he's put up half a WAR since being traded to the Pirates. And he generally has been looking pretty good with the Pirates. He's had a mid-3 FIP now on the season. And we have been fans of him. There's a reason you picked him, and I've been very much a fan of him as well. I really think the Pirates are going to ultimately be really happy with that trade, especially considering Quintana was a rental. And finally, Alec Burleson, who has been looking better, but unfortunately for you, had a bit of a slow start and is at -0.3 F4.
Dang.
So
I thought he was going to be positive at this point.
No, that one's might be the killer. So that puts you for the whole game at 12.9 F4. It's a pretty good amount of WAR for 6 players from the Cardinals. Now me, Ben took Paul Goldschmidt. I took Nolan Arenado. Obvious, right? He ends before today's game with a 7.2. So actually doing better than Goldie, which is not that surprising, though, when you consider his elite defense and the fact that he had one of the best offensive seasons of his career. But it's almost more of a testament to Goldie's offensive season that they're at the same WAR when Arenado is doing what he does at third base every day.
Sure, yeah.
Next, I took Dylan Carlson. It has felt like a disappointing year, but he's still at 2.4 F WAR. Hey. So if your floor is 2.5 WAR, that's not a bore, but I hope he can do more.
Oh my God. You kept going.
I can't wait to see him soar.
Okay.
Of that, I am sure. All right. Adam Wainwright. Ben is like so disgusted right now.
Get me off.
Yeah. Adam Wainwright. 2.8.
Let's go.
Yeah. He's been struggling a little bit lately, but even still, he was at 2.3 the last time we checked in. So still put up half a WAR in the last couple months. Nolan Gorman, 0.5.
Womp womp.
Which is disappointing because he was at 1 the last time we did this. So that's a decline for me. Juan Yepez, 0.1, which he was at 0.2 last time we checked in. So not great. And then Matthew Liberatore is at a flat 0. So he stands to...
He's having a good start right now.
He's having a good start. So I might be able to pick up a couple points right now. So
I can tell this is going to be really close.
So I was going to cut this but it's like, it's ridiculous. So Ben, your total is 12.9 F WAR.
All right, let's go.
Mine is a flat 13.
Oh, come on.
So I have you right now by 0.1.
So this game could actually swing this.
It could. You need... So you've got Oviedo, Burleson, and Donovan going.
Yeah. And
although Donovan did not start, so he'd have to come into the game.
Oh yeah, you're right. Which probably will not happen.
Probably not, but you never know.
Yeah.
I've got Arenado, Yepez, Carlson, and Liberatore. 4 of my 6, and 3 of your 6, including Oviedo, who did give up 2 runs and has given up a bunch of hits. So it's not looking great for you, but a home run
Burley would have to go off. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I've got a slight advantage going in, and I've got Liberatore, who's starting well, but
all right,
it won't take much. A single game, you can swing 0.1 in either direction. So I will rerun this at the end of the game, and we'll do an update, next week. But I could not believe that.
Oh my God. Yeah. Hey, this turned out to be a good game.
I know. It's pretty remarkable just how close it was. I was running away with it for a little while, but then Donovan and Oviedo all, really, really picked up for you. And Yepez and Gorman really took a step down, and Carlson really didn't do much in the last month. So so it's, I think, most likely right now, especially where we are in the game, I will hold on and win, but there's still several innings.
Hey,
if
there's
Liberatore
intrigue
gets
here,
if Liberatore gets lit up, I could fall. So So we'll see. I'll update us. We'll do a much quicker update next week when we come back. So
wow.
So yeah, that'll do it. That's been a fun game, and we did some bold predictions and stuff at the beginning of the season that we'll go into whenever the postseason is done. We'll do a deeper breakdown of the full year and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, that'll do it for this episode. So thank you everyone, as always, for being a part. It's been a fantastic regular season. One of the most memorable, I think, that we've ever seen as Cardinal fans. And, doing this podcast this whole time too has been a lot of fun and made it feel even more like an eventful season. So thank you all for listening. The next time we are here, one way or another, we'll know how this postseason, this series against the Phillies has gone.
Yeah.
So we'll be watching it. We'll be in the Birds Gourd. Now would be a great time to hop in. We'll be in there chatting through all the games.
You could come in for 1 month and bounce out.
That's a great point. We don't. You subscribe, you're in, and if you hate it, if you're like, oh God, Ben, really?
We don't blame you.
We don't blame. Yeah, honestly, it's the expected outcome. No, but yeah, come in, for a month, hang out, and you can bounce. That's fine. We get it. I guess that'll be it for this episode, and we'll be back next week as always. And until then, go Cardinals.
Yeah, take off work Friday, I guess.
Yeah.
Walking out.